I'm going to continue now to talk about the Center for Security Policy and who we are and what we've been doing and our ambitious plans for 2020. Now, I didn't think I'd be here over a year ago. I was working for the President as a Deputy Assistant and Executive Secretary and Chief of Staff at the National Security Council. I didn't plan to go back into the government. I had been in government for 25 years, but I couldn't turn down an opportunity to serve this president and to help his policies succeed. And it was an incredible opportunity. I flew on Air Force One, and I saw a president who has really thrown out the diplomatic rule book and try to do what is right for this country with his America First strategy that puts the American people and American jobs and the American economy first, and not the interests of globalists and the United Nations and elitists who seem to have other objectives in mind. And I think it's a strategy that is where the American people are. I had an opportunity to work on national security policies across the board. I had an opportunity to process transcripts of presidential phone calls with foreign leaders. And that has given me the opportunity to go on CNN and to call out the many lies that are being told about this president and how this whole impeachment affair is a misrepresentation of what's going on inside this government. And I'm going to talk about that later, because the Center's never been politically incorrect. We speak out to do the right thing, and we have our set of enemies. But Winston Churchill said one time, "You have enemies, good. It means that you stood up for something in your life." And that's the way Frank Gaffney started the Center. It's the way that it's been run under my leadership, and it's the way we will be as long as this organization's around. Now, one thing I observed in the government was the appalling and persistent resistance by career civil servants to this president's initiatives. And it was within the National Security Council, within the State Department, and you're seeing it with these civil servants coming up, testifying against the president right now. And I saw one recently say that he was offended that when the president spoke on a phone call with the Ukrainian prime minister or the Ukrainian president, he didn't use this guy's talking points, which represented official U.S. government foreign policy. I'm sorry, the president sets official U.S. government foreign policy. And it's this arrogance by the career civil servants, some people call the deep state or the swamp, that was really appalling. And I want to give you just one example that I thought was very illustrative. I was in an interagency meeting in the White House Situation Room, and we were debating a new counterterrorism strategy. And there was a very minor change that we were fighting over to get a sentence in there that's saying that radical Islam is a driver of terrorism. I don't think that's too controversial, and a lot of people in this room would go further than that. You wouldn't believe the senior officials from several agencies who were so incensed that this would be added that they didn't want the term radical Islam or anything like it into a U.S. government document. They would not step away from the Obama administration policy. And this is, of course, a president who said that ISIS was a JV terrorist group. We succeeded, but just the resistance to that little sentence reflects the problems we have with the government bureaucracy and the work that we have ahead of us. And I'm going to talk about that shortly. So when Frank asked me to succeed him as president, it was a difficult decision. And I went to see Ambassador John Bolton, my boss at the National Security Council. And John said, "Look, I hate to lose you, but I think you might do us more good returning to your pundit work and writing and TV interviews. We need more experts on TV." And my perspective was, man, that the Center is such a fabulous place to work before this administration because of the alliances we've formed and the important policies we've worked on. We've become go-to experts on so many issues. But now is the time, there's never been a time to work for the Center or to support the Center, because we're making such an enormous difference in helping this president make our nation safe and great. The center was founded 31 years ago by a group of national security experts led by Frank Gaffney, and they were dedicated to President Reagan's motto of peace through strength, and they wanted to finish the job that President Reagan started of defeating the existential threat to freedom of our time, the Soviet Union. And this led to an organization that became so well known for its effective efforts to promote sound national security policies on a whole range of issues: a strong national defense, speaking out against radical Islam as a global movement at war with modern society, go-to experts on Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, terrorism, cyber. And you've seen from the slideshow we had earlier that the center is very involved in issues across the board. We've worked on missile defense. We have an initiative right now to help the Trump administration deal with the deterioration of our nuclear deterrent, because successive administrations are allowing our nuclear weapons to deteriorate while other nations are rapidly expanding their nuclear force. It's something that I'm very proud of. We're going to be putting a book out next month. Keep an eye out for that at our website. And we couldn't do any of this without your help. We've had incredibly generous supporters who have helped us run this organization over the past 31 years. We have a very ambitious agenda for the future, and I hope we can continue to rely on your support. One thing that we have been working on is something that's now being referred to as cancel culture. It's an effort by the left to basically deny free speech to conservatives. And this doesn't just mean not letting conservatives speak on college campuses. It's meaning snuffing us out online, on websites, on Twitter, on Facebook. And they've been remarkably effective, and you've seen it concerning this dinner. You saw the press attacking this dinner, both over the weekend and a month ago. And the center's used to this, because in 2016, we had a dinner honoring Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Ron Dermer, and Zionist Organization of America President Morton Klein. And ZOA is a big friend of the center, and I'd like to recognize them. Ambassador Dermer and Klein were pressed very hard not to attend our dinner, not to accept awards from us, and I was very proud of them that they did not give in to that pressure. And last year, we recognized a true freedom fighter, Congressman Devin Nunes, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Nunes was put under enormous pressure, too, not to accept an award from us and not to show up at our dinner. And when he was told this, he said to his staff, "No way, I stand with my friends." And this event was especially memorable because not only was it in the middle of Nunes' efforts to beat back the Democrats' fraudulent Russia collusion hoax that they were pushing, but we held this event at the Trump International Hotel in Washington. So we didn't give up, Nunes didn't give up, and we're not going to give up in the future. But one thing we are doing, we are working in a big coalition in Washington to try to fight against this cancel culture, fight against efforts to snuff out conservative viewpoints, conservative speakers on college campuses and on the internet. I'm not going to say in front of our cameras what we're doing because I don't want the left to know. But if you are interested, if you're working in this space, let us know because we'd like you to join us. For the first 28 years of our organization, we really were pretty effective, as I said, and we worked closely with Congress and allied organizations and the press, the news media, to get our message out. We criticized Republican and Democratic administrations when they did things that we thought were not in the interest of the United States. But this situation changed drastically in the run-up to the 2016 presidential election when we started running something called National Security Action Summits for all of the candidates who are running for president. And there's one candidate, Donald J. Trump, who came to a summit, and we gave him briefings on threats to the U.S. power grid. And these threats were things he was not aware of and said he would try to deal with as president. And I'm proud to say in March of this year, he issued an outstanding executive order to defend the U.S. power grid and to defend it against electromagnetic pulse attacks. And I know the work of the center and the advice that we gave to the president helped bring about this important policy that had been resisted for years by government bureaucrats. The president also gave a crucial speech in August 2016 that exactly reflected advice we had been giving him. It was titled, "Understanding the Threat, Radical Islam and the Age of Terror." And it was the beginning of a close relationship that we struck between this president and his administration, where we've been able to implement policies that we've been arguing for 30 years, and we finally have had implemented. And this includes on Iran and Syria and North Korea, terrorism. And on Iran, my colleague Claire Lopez, who you met a little while ago, Claire and I co-authored a strategy that was the basis of the strategy the president used to withdraw the United States from the fraudulent nuclear deal with Iran. And the center took a different approach from some groups in Washington who said, well, maybe we can cut a deal with the Europeans and the Iranians. Maybe we can make this nuclear deal less bad. And our position, and this is also the position of Ambassador Bolton, this deal is so bad it has to go, and we have to pull out of it. And when Trump administration officials, I'm not going to name them, they're not in the government anymore, did not do that and did not follow the president's directive, the center did not hesitate to ruthlessly attack them in the media and in print. Basically, we wanted the president to follow the promises he made as a candidate. And I was very glad in 2018 that he withdrew from this agreement. But we're seeing something else right now in Iran and in Iraq and in Lebanon, all this instability. What's driving it? It's something called maximum pressure. It's the maximum pressure policy that President Trump instituted in place of this fraudulent nuclear deal with Iran that is leading the Iraqis to turn against the Iranians who are trying to dominate their government. It's leading to protests against Iran in Lebanon, and it has led to massive, massive protests in Iran. This is a successful strategy. The media is not going to talk about it, and I'm proud that the Center for Security Policy played a significant role in helping bring about this policy. Recently, we've been very active on other fronts. Now, early in the administration, we fought hard to try to explain the fraudulence of this Russia collusion idea, what was really going on, how intelligence was being politicized to hurt this president. I wrote an op-ed in mid-2016 that if the president won the election, the intelligence community would come after him, and they came after him, as you know. Lately, we have been very active trying to expose this fraudulent so-called CIA whistleblower and this ridiculous impeachment scam that the Democrats are pushing. Should we call this the Adam Schiff's impeachment circus? We're calling it out. We call it the way we see it. We're trying to do the right thing to get the president to be treated fairly, to make sure that our country doesn't have developments in Congress that are undermining our democratic system. So I want to talk about 2020. We have big plans for 2020. We want to try to do something called set the national security battle space to get all presidential candidates to adopt sound national security policies to prevent backsliding from the achievements of this administration. For example, we don't want to see the United States rejoin the nuclear deal with Iran. We want to maintain strong pressure on China to stop predatory trade practices. And we want to make sure that the United States remains a decisive and powerful state and doesn't return to the Obama administration days in the Middle East when our policy was leading from behind. That can't happen again. But we have some specific proposals we're going to push very hard. One of them is we're going to press all the presidential candidates, and it's probably going to be on one side, that we need a very decisive stand against socialism. We know that socialism kills. It has destroyed countries. It is a failed philosophy that leads to misery. It's appalling that so many young people today don't understand this, but it's even more appalling that there are presidential candidates who say they're socialists. This can't stand. And we're going to talk about it because this is a national security issue just like anything else. Frank Gaffney has a very important initiative called the Committee on the Present Danger of China that he'll be talking about. And it's going to make sure that the American people, the administration, and Congress understand the full range of looming and growing threats from China, and if there is a trade deal with China, that is a good deal. And finally, there's a new initiative that the Center is pushing that I'm very proud of called the Defense of Israel Project. This is an effort to highlight and to educate the American people and Congress and people in the administration of the surge in anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism and hostility towards Israel that is not just a threat to religious freedom. It is a threat to American national security because it is an effort to destroy the U.S.-Israel relationship. It is an effort to destroy the state of Israel and its credibility. Now, we had a standing room only panel about this at CPAC, and we had another panel in our office recently. We have a major initiative on this because I think we all know there's a problem here. Now, this should not be a partisan thing. I wrote an article not long ago praising Nancy Pelosi for a fabulous speech she gave at the AIPAC conference where she said anti-Semitism is anti-American and American security is Israel's security. But look, Nancy Pelosi is a dying breed. The Squad does not support Israel. The Squad is anti-Semitic. It's not just socialist. We have to call them out. And when Ilhan Omar made grossly anti-Semitic comments, and Nancy Pelosi could not pass a statement condemning them or Omar, and instead had to pass a resolution to condemn every assorted type of bigotry, including Islamophobia, we obviously have a problem. Think about it. Congresswoman Omar makes anti-Semitic slurs, and the House condemns Islamophobia. There's something wrong. There's something wrong when that happens. We want to call it out. We want to support Democratic members of Congress to tell them, we expect you to stand up to this hatred, not just because it's a religious thing, but because this is a threat to global security. So this is a big initiative, and I would welcome your support for it. So in summary, I feel so honored to have had the opportunity to work with this organization and to be its president and CEO. I know we're doing good work. We're going to do good work in 2020. And it's great to have this program tonight to recognize the House Freedom Caucus and Newsmax Media CEO Christopher Ruddy, because they are also making important contributions to promote our national security and freedom, and you're going to be hearing about them in a moment.